who breaks the power of sin and darkness, whose love is mighty and so much stronger, the King of glory, the King above all kings, who shakes the whole earth with holy thunder and leaves breathless in awe and wonder, the King of glory, the King above all kings. Here we go. This is amazing grace. This is unfailing love, that you would take my place, that you would bear my cross. You laid down your life, that I would be set free. Whoa, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Sing out, who brings our chaos back into order, who makes the orphan a son and daughter, the King of glory, the King above all kings, who rules the nations with truth and justice, shines like the sun in all of its brilliance, the King of glory, the King above all kings. Yeah, this is amazing grace. This is unfailing love, that you would take my place, that you would bear my cross. You laid down your life, that I would be set free. Whoa, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Sing out, worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquers the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquers the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy, worthy, worthy. Oh, this is amazing grace. This is unfailing love, that you would take my place, that you would bear my cross. Oh, you laid down your life, that I would be set free. Whoa, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. All that you've done for me. All that you've done for me. Amen. Amen.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I didn't deserve it. Still you gave your life away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves a 99. I couldn't earn it, didn't deserve it. Still you gave your life away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves a 99. I couldn't earn it, I didn't deserve it. Still you gave your life away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
Amen. I'm calling on the God of Jacob, who whose love endures through generations. I know that you will keep your covenant. I'm calling on the God of Moses, the one who opened up the oceans. I need you now to do the same thing for me. Oh God, my God, I need you. Oh God, my God, I need you now. How I need you now. Oh rock of ages, I'm standing on your faithfulness. Your faithfulness. Let's call him tonight. I'm calling on the God of Mary, whose favor rests upon the lowly. I know with you all things are possible. Amen. I'm calling on the God of David, who made a shepherd boy courageous. I may not face Goliath, but I've got my own giants. Oh God, my God, I need you. Oh God, my God, I need you now. How I need you now. Oh rock of ages, I'm standing on your faithfulness. Your faithfulness. Oh God, my God, I need you. Oh God, my God, I need you now. How I need you now. Oh rock of ages, I'm standing on your faithfulness. Your faithfulness. It's your faithfulness. Worship you, God. You are faithful. You heard your children then. You hear your children now. You are the same God. You are the same God. You answer prayers back then, and you will answer now. You are the same God. You are the same God. You were providing then. You are providing now. You are the same God. You are the same God. You moved in power then. God, move in power now. You are the same God. You are the same God. You were a healer then. You are a healer now. You are the same God. You are the same God. You were a savior then. You are a savior now. You are the same God. You are the same. Sing it out. Oh God, my God, I need you. Oh God, my God, I need you now. How I need you now. Oh rock of ages, I'm standing on your faithfulness. Your faithfulness. Sing one more time. Oh God, my God, I need you. Oh God, my God, I need you now. How I need you now. Yeah. Oh rock of ages. I'm standing on your faithfulness. Your faithfulness.
Hey, I want to invite you to pray with me. Lord, I thank you so much that as we look back upon history, upon human history, it is marked by you and your unchanging character, by your faithfulness towards people who aren't always faithful towards you. We look back and we see your pursuit of your children. We see the amazing, the incredible grace that you show us. And so I thank you that as we reflect back on where we've been and on what's ahead, that we can acknowledge that you have been able to use people who are far from perfect, but are willing and are ready just to believe that you can work in their lives. And so that's where we want to find ourselves today. Lord, I pray that you would continue to give us greater reasons to place trust and confidence in you, and not our ability to have it all together and be the people that are perfect in all the right ways, but to trust in you fully. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, everybody. It is great to see you all, and I wish you a early Happy New Year. My name is Scott, and I'm not going to let you take a seat just yet because I could tell you wanted to interact a bit, right? So you're looking forward to that. So I got a question for you in case you're wondering. I got one planned. But I'm wondering, as you look forward to 2023, what is something big or small that you go, you know what, I'm actually looking forward to it? It could be a trip. It could be somebody that you're hoping to reconnect with. It could be something small you're looking to doing around the home, maybe something else. But I'd love to have you take a minute right now, wish somebody an early Happy New Year, and then ask them what's something that they're looking forward to in 2023. Well, it is so good having you all with us this evening. I want to welcome you to Terra Nova. If you're watching online, thanks for tuning in this week. But man, we're going to have a great time. Anybody up for a early New Year's party? We're going to have a New Year's party a little later on. You ready for that? We're going to do that? Yeah, have some fun with that. Some of you are going, that's my first party of the night. That's great. We're happy to host you for that one. But again, I want to thank you all for being with us. My name is Scott, and it is great to have you with us as we are just past Christmas, and we've got this New Year's weekend, and we are so happy that you joined us. I hope that you had a great Christmas, and I'm so glad just to see a great crew out tonight. And hopefully on your way in, we handed you a program. If you got a program, open it up. We got some great things in there. If you happen to be, this is one of your first times with us, and you just go, you know what I want to do on New Year's Eve is to be here at Terra Nova. Man, what a treat for us just to have you. Thank you so much. Within this program, you're going to see a few different things. You might want to use these message notes in a few moments. We've got some upcoming series that we're really looking forward to in 2023. But the first thing to do with this program is to find this back flap right here. This is what we call our Connect card. And right now, we're all going to fold it over, tear it off like I'm doing. Oh, listen to that sound of tearing paper. It's great. And this Connect card is a great way just to kind of keep in touch with one another, to know how everybody's doing, how to care for and support each other. And so if there's something going on right now that you say, hey, you know what, as I'm reflecting on this year, maybe it's something that you're grateful for, or maybe it's something coming up that you go, you know what, here's something I'm looking forward to, or I could use prayer for. Let us know that. If you got questions, or if there's something going on in your life that you'd like to talk with somebody about, you can indicate that there on the Connect card as well. But we would love to get a Connect card from everybody this weekend. And you can also fill it out on the Terra Nova app if you've got that, or online. But as we're looking forward to 2023, one of the things that is just a realization is that this first month of 2023 is going to be a month full of opportunities to really connect with one another around Terra Nova. And so to begin this year, one of the things that you'll read about in the program is that we've got a Young Guys Park Day. And so we're kind of opening this up to guys who are in their 20s and 30s. We're going to have a great time. If you're in that demographic, you can read more about that. But that's coming up next Sunday. We've also got a men's breakfast that's happening. And so that's coming up a couple weeks from now. We've got life groups that we're going to be rolling out for everybody just to jump in and join. And we'll have those in the program beginning next weekend. And so we can go, hey, you know what? As I want to connect and build relationships and grow in my spiritual walk, that's a great opportunity for that. One of the new things that we're doing, this is the first time we've ever done this, is later on, towards the end of January, we're partnering with the city of Lake Forest to do something really cool. they do this annual Snow Fest where they've got 100 tons of snow at Pittsford Park. And we connected with them and said, hey, how would it be if we just, came together and we created a team to help out? And they said, we would love that. And so we said, we've got the people who would love to do that too. And so if you go, you know what, I would love to be a part of that and pulling off this great event where there's sledding down the hill and all sorts of things going on, then you could sign up for that. You can read more about it here in the back of the program. But if you want to be a part of that team, just write Snowfest team somewhere on your Connect card. And if you got little ones who would like to sled and be a part of that, you can also get them signed up. They do that there at the Lake Forest Recreation Center. And so you can get them all dialed in for that. But as we look forward to 2023, we are just grateful that we've got such a great community that places this value on relationships and being there for each other and showing up in one another's lives. And so thank you for the privilege that it's been to walk through life with you this past year. And we are looking forward just the opportunity to share in life together in 2023. So that's ahead. But tonight, we are going to have a special treat, and I want you to put your hands together as we welcome up our young adults pastor, Dominic Jackson, as we hear from him tonight.
All right, thank you. Again, my name is Dominic. I get the pleasure of closing out one year and kicking off another here. And something that I have been reflecting on lately as I look back at this last year is how much of it I actually wasn't fully present for. Let me elaborate. Sometimes a song will come on and instantly it will take me back to high school, and I'll have these memories come flooding in of me and my buddies driving around in our first cars. Or other times, I'm not jumping backwards, but I'm actually in the future a bit. I'll be in the nursery on the floor with my daughter. I'll have her favorite cow toy. She's a singing cow. She loves for some reason. I'll have that in one hand. I'll have my cell phone in the other hand, and I'm real quick scheduling meetings, answering emails, and I'm there, but I'm also somewhere else too. Or other times, I don't know if this has ever happened to anyone here, but sometimes I'll be leaving my house, and I remember pulling out of the neighborhood, and then suddenly I'm getting off the off-ramp of a freeway. And I don't even remember the whole time that I was on the freeway. Some of you guys are looking at me like I will never drive with that guy. I don't blame you. Maybe I'm the only one. But still, the point is that so much of my life, I'm either thinking about the future or I'm living back in the past, or even when I am present, I'm not fully present. This reminds me of a story of a guy named Moses you may have heard of. And in the book of Exodus, we read this story where God has a really important message that he wants to give to his people. And so he finds probably one of the least likely candidates, a guy named Moses, and he's going to use him to be the messenger. But he's got to get some alone time with Moses, and so he calls him up on this mountain. He actually calls him up approximately 8 times. But what's really interesting is on the 6th time, he gives him some very interesting instructions. He tells him that he says, when you are on the mountain, remain on the mountain. Or how the literal Hebrew translation reads it is, come up onto me to the mountain and be there on the mountain, and I give to thee the message on the mountain. Now, at first reading, it sounds like one of two things. Either Moses is a 2-year-old and needs some very, very specific instructions. If you've ever brought a child to Target to buy a toy for someone else, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Either Moses needed some very specific instructions, or God is being incredibly redundant here. It's like, yeah, when you're on the mountain, be on the mountain, and make sure you're on the mountain. Got it. Where else would you be? But James McGregor, 19th century Scottish theologian, he wrote a commentary on the Exodus. It's about like 10,000 pages long. But he talks about how incredibly profound this moment is. He explains that God knows Moses so well that he knows that when he is alone with God, that Moses is probably going to be in one of 2 places. He's either going to be thinking about all the events that led him to that moment. He's going to be thinking all that he had left behind. Or Moses is in his mind also going to be thinking about he climbed that mountain. He's going to have to climb back down. He's going to be thinking about all that was waiting for him, all the stuff he had to do, all the people who were back home who needed him, needed things of him. And so what does God say? He says, when you are on the mountain, be on the mountain. or how I hear that is, when you are with me, I want all of you here with me. And I believe that this presence with God, this intimacy, this relationship, we are also being invited into in this moment. Today we're going to look at our past, our present, and our future, and how each one of these can either hold us up or they can hold us back. They can either paralyze us or they can prepare us for what God has in store for us. Would you guys pray with me? God, we know that you are here in this room, and so God, help us to be here too. Harden our hearts to any distractions out there, the stuff we have to do, all that is waiting for us. But God, soften our hearts to you. We just want to be in your presence and to be present while we're here. Amen. If you have your Bibles, turn with me to the Gospel according to Luke. Gospel according to Luke. Luke is a biographer we're going to learn a little bit more about. This would be a great time to say, hey, in a couple weeks, we're actually going to be doing a whole series on Luke. I'm really excited. This is just going to be a little sneak peek. But as you are turning to Luke, I have to share this crazy story I read about in the news not too long ago. And in this article, I read about a southern town that were so tired. It was a town full of a lot of bars, a lot of college town. And the southern town decided they were so tired of people drinking and driving that they decided to come up with this way to try and curb that. And so what they decided was when someone was convicted, they got a DUI, that they were going to have to do some community service at the side of the road, wear a bright orange vest. It's pretty typical. But the catch with this town is they decided that on the back of the vest in giant letters, it read, "I am a drunk driver." Or other vests, I saw other slogans said, "I was caught driving drunk." Or one even said, "I am a reckless drunk." Now, I understand that drinking and driving is incredibly serious and dangerous and reckless, and I understand the desperation to try and get this to stop. But when I read this article, it made me start to ask, how effective is this to try and publicly shame somebody into changing? This also led me to think, what would it be like if I had to put on something telling everybody about my past, about the worst sin I had ever done? What would it be like to literally wear my shame every single day? Keep this story in mind while we look at the text, Luke 8:40. It reads, "Now when Jesus returned, a crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. Then a man named Jairus, the synagogue leader, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come to his house because his only daughter, a girl of about 12, was dying. As Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him." And so here, Jesus is on his way. He's got somewhere to go. He's going to be helping this political, religious, very important person. He's going to go and heal his daughter, and he hits the road. But word starts to spread about Jesus. He is speaking boldly. He's performing these miracles. He's healing people without a copay. And so all these people start crowding around him, and he can't get to where he's going. And so he's trying to push through this crowd. He's got somewhere to be, and then he's interrupted. Let's keep reading. "A woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her." So this woman has a uterine hemorrhage. Dr. Luke, our biographer, diagnoses her. And in other accounts, the woman is simply referred to as the bleeding woman. She doesn't get a name. No doubt this would be how she would be known in her community. The bleeding woman, this actually becomes her entire identity. And in other parts of the Bible, notably John 9, we read about in this culture how it was believed that if you had any sort of physical ailment, disability, disorder, anything wrong with you, that this was a punishment from God. This is what was believed in this culture. And so in John 9, Jesus comes across a blind man, and the first thing his disciples say is, "Who sinned? Was it him or was it his parents?" Because clearly somebody messed up here. Jesus takes this moment to correct them and tell them how wrong their thinking is. But still, this was believed that this woman would have been being punished. Also important to acknowledge for Jewish people, if you were to come in contact with blood, you were considered ceremonially unclean. You would not be able to enter the temple. You would have to be cleansed by the priest. It was incredibly publicly humiliating. And so you must understand the ramifications for this woman. She was constantly bleeding, and this would make her viewed as unclean, as an outcast, unwanted. Think about what this means for her. In the last 12 years, she has probably not been touched. She has not been hugged. She has not been kissed on the cheek. Even the priest probably wouldn't have laid a hand on her to pray for her. She's had no touch whatsoever. And Levitical law meant that she ate every single meal by herself. She had no community, probably no real friendships. And as she got older, she watched as the other women in the community would meet someone or the person would be introduced to them, it would be set up, they would get married, they would have babies, and they would take their role in society while she took hers, on par with the leper. But then she sees a glimmer of hope. She hears about this rabbi, this teacher, and he's healing. And could he be the answer for her? So what does she do? Let's keep reading. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. Who touched me? Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you. But Jesus said, someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me. Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. I could imagine her saying this with shame, knowing that she had broken so many cultural and ceremonial rules. She touched a man who was not her husband, a rabbi, while menstruating. Are you kidding me? What was she thinking? And so I imagine with her head down, she probably can't even make eye contact with Jesus as she says, it was me. Waiting on him to punish her, to make an example out of her, to take this as a moment to teach and embarrass her. And how does Jesus respond? Verse 48. Then he said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. The first thing that Jesus does to this woman is he sees her. He gives her dignity. He welcomes her. He claims her into his family. Calls her daughter. Daughter, you cannot even imagine the cultural understanding of what he just said. The culture shock that people around him would have thought hearing this. This outsider, this unclean, this sinner, this untouchable, unlovable woman, he calls daughter. Now, when it comes to this story, I imagine that there are a lot of us in this room who at times probably could relate to this woman. Probably we have felt like outsiders based on what culture or maybe even other people, maybe family members have told us and said about us. Or like the news story that I read, some of us willingly put on our vest, our invisible vest. No one else could see it but us when we look in the mirror. And we put it on. But instead of saying bleeding woman, some say cheater or dropout, liar, felon, victim, addict, promiscuous, unlovable. And these words on our back, I have worn plenty of vests in my life. These words, they become how we see ourselves. They become our entire identity. But what I want to focus on here is notice that this woman's reputation, her past, instead of allowing this to push her away from Jesus, she allows this to become a bridge that brings her closer to him. Our past can either define us or it can invite us. And what are we being invited into? The same as this woman. True freedom that can only come from God. Now, I know that for some, when we look back at our past, all we might see is tons of pain. And I don't want to minimize what anyone here has gone through in their own story. But something that has changed the way that I look at my past is seeing how it actually brings me closer. It's an opportunity, like this woman, to bring me closer to God. Let me explain. Christianity is the only religion that gives you a God who suffered. Hebrews explains, you had a God who experienced what you are experiencing. No other faith system gives you that. Every single worldview. I spent half my life as an atheist, and when I started to look for what I believed, I tried every single faith system except for Christianity, and I explored them all. And I could tell you every single worldview that I have found is about us trying to earn our way to God. And the gospel, the good news is this, that God came down to us. And so, here we see that God is here and walks amongst us, and he's here to not just see us and walk with us, but to celebrate with us, to be worshiped by us, to save us. But Hebrews also explains to hurt with us. God experienced this, and it nailed him to the cross. And so the author of Hebrews says, go to him. And what I have learned is sometimes the people who I've known who have been hurt the most sometimes can see God the most clearly. This is why the very first person in the scriptures to give God a name, the very first person is not a pastor, it's not a prophet, it's not a king, it's a woman named Hagar, a runaway slave. She's hurting, she's an unwed single mother, a foreigner. And she says, I have seen the God who sees me. At this time, in her culture, in their religiousness, nobody would dare give God a name. And in her pain, she does. The God who sees me, and it pulls her closer to him. If you are waiting for an invitation to no longer allow your past to define you, let 2023 be it. I love this quote. Remember, you don't drown by falling in the water. You drown by staying there. So take off your vest. Lay down your burdens. See this as an opportunity to move on. And for some, this might mean seeking professional help. I'm a huge advocate of therapy, mental health. God works through that, and he has in my own life, possibly. But regardless, don't let your past rob you from the present. Now, sometimes, just as destructive as being trapped in the past is when we are stuck in the present with blinders on to what is right in front of us. In Luke 5, we're going to meet a guy named Simon Peter, and Simon comes across Jesus, and Jesus gives him some really interesting fishing instructions that don't make a lot of sense. Simon Peter's like, all right, he's coming back to shore with his nets empty. He's like, okay, give it one last shot. So he throws his nets over the boat. You might know the story. And he cannot even believe the amount of fish that they have to pull up. And so in this moment, in his disbelief, it's the most outrageous and unexplainable thing he's ever seen in all of his years as a fisherman. And so how does he respond? Let's take a look. Luke 5:8. It reads, when Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, go away from me, Lord, I am a sinful man. For he and all his companions were astonished at the catch of fish they had taken. And so were James and John, the son of Zebedee, Simon's partners. Then Jesus said to Simon, don't be afraid. From now on you will fish for people. So they pulled their boats up to shore, left everything, and followed him. Peter realized who was before him, and his first response is, get away from me. I don't even deserve to be anywhere near you. He's feeling the shame, and again, Jesus draws near. Now, you might be wondering why this keeps happening in the Gospels. When people recognize who Jesus is, the first thing they say is, get away from me. This shame that they feel, and it was believed in this culture that the more pure you were, the more religious, the more important you were, that if somebody came near you who was a sinner, who was unclean, that they would make you blemish. Their sin would affect you and would tarnish you and your soul and who you were. And so instantly people are pushing Jesus away. And of course, the good news is this, that God draws near to us and the opposite happens and he makes us clean. But again, Jesus comes along and changes everything. And so here, Simon Peter moves towards him. And as we're talking about our presence, something that I've been reflecting on in this story is just how incredible this request was from Jesus. I mean, often whenever I think about Simon Peter, I kind of imagine this guy down by the riverbed. He owns like one fishing pole. He's got a bag slung over his shoulder. But the truth is, Simon Peter was actually a businessman. He had a business. He had employees. Jesus asked him, he comes along and Jesus asked him to leave it all behind. To leave behind his livelihood, his family, his business, his possessions, his future, his safety. And accepting this invitation, Simon loses everything and gains so much more. Peter learns that the presence of Jesus is greater than our present circumstances. Peter walks away from his past, who he was as a fisherman, his family business, but he also walks away from his future as he knows it because of the present opportunity in front of him. His eyes are opened. Now, I do want to acknowledge the obvious here. When it comes to following Jesus, at times this can be absolutely terrifying. And I'm sure some of that is what Simon Peter was feeling. What is the first thing that Jesus says to Simon after the event takes place? Do not be afraid. In fact, did you know that in the scriptures, there is a phrase that is found over and over and over? In fact, it's found 365 times in the scriptures, and that is fear not, or do not be afraid. 365 times. It's almost like God wants to use these writers to communicate that we are going to need to hear that one day, every single day of the year, because this at times can be scary. There's a popular Christian radio station, I'm not going to say which one, and I love this station, there's nothing against them, but there's this popular Christian radio station, and their slogan is safe for the whole family. Safety. I always thought that was interesting. Safety. No mention of the spiritual battle that is before us, or of worship, or of the cost of following Jesus. No. Tune in here, and you won't have to worry about your kids singing along to Top 40. And I'll admit, it is nice having a station on the radio that isn't full of hookup culture and violence. Absolutely. But the point is that when I read this book, safety isn't the first word that comes to mind for me when it comes to following Jesus. It seems to follow Jesus costs something. To be present with Jesus costs something. And speaking of that cost, back to Simon Peter, I've often questioned, what would I do if Jesus offered me the same thing today? If Jesus approached me and told me to leave everything behind and to take a risk and to follow him? And I'm going to be completely honest with you. My answer depends on the day of the week that you ask me. There are times when I would say, absolutely, let's go. But there are other times that I think, honestly, what I would probably do is I would counter-offer Jesus with my own negotiations. I would say something like, how about I follow you twice a week? Or, I got a lot of things going on right now. Come back next summer and I'll be ready to go. Or honestly, if I'm completely honest here, probably what I would say if I was in Simon Peter's position would be, let me go sell all this stuff. My boat, my fishing pole, let me go sell this as a backup plan just in case this whole thing doesn't work out. And then I'm ready to go. Sometimes my walk with God feels like I'm allowing Jesus a spot in my car. It's like I pull up next to the curb and I open the back door, the back seat, say, come on in, Jesus, hop in, we're going somewhere together. Or maybe whenever I'm especially proud of myself and I'm feeling a little high and mighty, I might say, Jesus, come on up here to the passenger seat. I saved a spot for you. Reminds me of those bumper stickers that say, Jesus is my co-pilot, which sometimes they're some of the worst drivers I've ever seen. I'm like, oh, you're not helping the cause. But that's a whole other story. That's a different sermon. But still, for years, I would view my faith as me driving and maybe allowing Jesus a spot and he could come along for the ride and feeling pretty good about that. But what I have learned is to fully follow Jesus, to be present with him. We see this in Simon's response. To be fully open to where he wants to lead. It is handing him the keys and saying, wherever you want to go, I'm going along for the ride. As scary, as mysterious, as costly, I just want to be present with you. Last story I want to look at here, and we've talked about our past, we've explored the present, and we've seen Simon Peter's eyes open to the presence in front of him. But sometimes just as destructive as being stuck in the past or blinded by our present is being paralyzed by the future. Last story on Jesus' journey for today, Luke 12:13. So here Jesus is teaching a sermon. He's talking about the kingdom of God. He's warning against evil. He's encouraging people to follow him. It's this amazing sermon. And halfway through his sermon, some guy decides to just start yelling from the crowd. And us pastors, preachers, we love that, by the way, when someone just starts yelling. I'm just kidding, please don't. But still, some guy just starts yelling in the middle of his sermon. And let's take a look at what is so important for this guy to interrupt Jesus' sermon. Verse 12:13. It reads, someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus replied, I don't know how he said it, but that's how I hear it. "Man, who appointed me a judge or arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store all my crops." Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. And who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God." And so this guy is in the presence of Jesus, the Messiah. And what is the first thing he thinks? Cool, I could get this guy to get my brother to give me more money. I could have more stuff. Now, this isn't completely random. According to Deuteronomy, the law, it was allowed to, if there was a dispute or a division over inheritance, you actually could find a rabbi to make a judgment, who in that case would serve as both teacher and attorney. But again, Jesus is given this sermon. He's talking about salvation. He's talking about heaven, judgment, spiritual battle, all this stuff. And this guy gets one chance in front of Christ. And what does he say? "I want to talk about how I could get some more money." And so Jesus decides to tell a story about a guy who has an abundance of goods and wealth, and he decides to store it all for himself. These grains at this time would signify a wealth that would be used for trading. And this guy thinks, I'm going to keep as much as I can for my future, and then I'll be able to coast for the rest of my life. Problem is, right when this guy is finished collecting, right when he probably can't store anymore, his barns are full, before he could spend it, before he could share it, before he could do anything with it, he dies. This parable reminds me of a book by a pastor, a guy named John Piper, and he wrote a book called Don't Waste Your Life. And in the book, he opens by telling the story about two missionaries, one in her late 80s, the other in her 80s. One in her late 70s, the other in her 80s. And it's about these two missionaries who have a medical background, and they go to a remote part of Africa. And they start just helping heal people, giving free medical and also talking about their faith in Jesus. And then one day, as they're driving to another town, the brakes go out in their van, and they go over a cliffside, and they die. But before anybody can call this event tragic, John Piper writes, and he says, looking back at their life, it is anything but that. In fact, he even describes it as glorious, looking at who these women were. As for what is tragic, he quotes an article from Reader's Digest to describe what he believes true tragedy is. This is the article. Bob and Penny took early retirement from their jobs in the Northeast 5 years ago when he was 59, she was 51. Now they live in Florida, where they cruise on their 30-foot trawler, playing softball and collecting shells. Without skipping a beat, he explains that that is a tragedy. And people today are spending billions of dollars trying to get you to buy it. And I only get 40 minutes, and so I'm pleading with you, don't. The American dream, nice house, a nice car, a nice job, nice family, nice retirement, collecting shells as the last chapter of your life in a little bubble before you meet God. Saying, here it is, God, my shell collection, and check out my boat, and I got a really nice swing too. That is tragic, and this is coming from someone who so badly wants those things. So badly wants to stay in my comfort zone and cling tightly to my stuff. I am preaching to myself here. But deep down, I know that there is so much more to life, and that joy I might feel is temporary whenever I think about my future. I love this quote from Piper. He writes, if you can't see the sun, you will be impressed with the street light. If you've never felt thunder and lightning, you'll be impressed with fireworks. And if you turn your back on the greatness and majesty of God, you'll fall in love with the world of shadows and short-lived pleasures. I love that. I want to tape that to my dashboard and read that every single day. My mom worked for years as a hospice aide, and her job was to spend time with people in their last moments. And that was a couple of things, making sure that their affairs were in order, helping any way she could, making sure they were comfortable, and then holding their hand as they passed on. And she explained to me that not one of them in their final moments ever said, I wish I would have worked more hours. I wish I had a bigger house in my life. I regret not holding on to more stuff. Some did share regrets, though. I wish I had spent more time with family. I wish I had told people how much they meant to me before it was too late. I wish I gave more. Or many times what people would say to her was, I wish I had done something remarkable. I'm here to tell you, brothers and sisters, the most remarkable thing you can do with your life is to lay it down and to follow Jesus. And that means giving him the keys and saying, my future is yours, wherever you want to go. I love this quote from Corrie ten Boom. She says, never be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God. And this trust is saying again, wherever you want to go, I'm ready. As scary, as mysterious as it is, getting me outside of my comfort zone, which I hate, I'm ready to go. So in closing, I want to offer just a couple more observations, a few takeaways from these encounters with Jesus on top of what we've talked about. And the first is that life often happens when we are the most busy. Jesus is on his way to perform a miracle. He is running out of time. This girl is dying, this little girl. He's on his way. He's got somewhere important to be. And then he is stopped by this woman. There could not be a more inconvenient time to be stopped. And Jesus stops everything he's doing and gives her his full attention. When we find ourselves in a similar situation, it is an opportunity to either say, why is this happening to me right now? Or to ask, what might God be using me for in this moment? The second one is you can't be present until you've rested. What is important to note here is not what is actually documented in these biographies of Jesus, but actually what is missing. When we read about the accounts of Jesus, often we think, okay, Jesus was here, he healed this guy, then he went to this town, then he went to the temple, then he gave this message, then he healed this other person. But in reality, it is a 3-day walk between Jerusalem and Galilee. 3 days. That is the quiet time. That is the soul time, the time to process, the time to listen to God. It's an opportunity for us to slow down. To be present, we have to rest. And so one of the best ways we could do that is to find something that feeds our soul. Bonus points if we could do it without a cell phone. Third thing, start with what's in front of you. A woman grabbed his coat. A fisherman came back to shore with empty nets. Some guy interrupted his sermon. And when it is time for Jesus to commission, to send out his followers, he explains that they are to do the same. What is in front of you? I love the message paraphrase of Matthew 10. This is his instructions as he's sending out his followers to continue his work. It reads, Jesus sent his 12 harvest hands out with this charge. Don't begin by traveling to some far-off place to convert unbelievers. And don't try to be dramatic by tackling some public enemy. Go to the lost, confuse people right here in the neighborhood. Tell them that the kingdom is here. Bring health to the sick, raise the dead, touch the untouchables, kick out the demons. You have been treated generously, so live generously. Right here, what is in front of us? Something that often pulls me away from being present with God is all the awful things happening in the world. John Elridge calls it compassion fatigue. He explains that our souls were not intended for all of this that weighs us down. Researchers have found that our mental capacity is actually for the size of a village. That is the amount of burdens that we are supposed to be carrying. That's about 120 to 150 people. That is the emotional toll we are supposed to be carrying. And now, just by opening your phone, going online, you now get the burdens of the entire world come crashing on you. And it weighs us down. And often I feel incredibly helpless in those moments. What can I even do? What can I even do? There's earthquakes in Asia. There's hunger in Africa. There's fires in Australia. And I feel like I'm everywhere all over the world, but also nowhere at the same time. Here's what I have found that we can do. This works for me and it might for you as well. First thing we could do when we feel overwhelmed with all the burdens in the world is we pray. We pray, and maybe that prayer will lead you to some sort of action, making a donation or signing something, but we pray again, and we hand that over to God. And then here's the best thing that we could do. We make some soup, and we go give it to our neighbor who is sick. That is the best thing that we could possibly do when we see all the burdens happening in the world, is find the people in front of us. If you find someone, a friend from church who recently lost their job, it's showing up with groceries. It's taking out a coworker who's going through a tough time out to coffee and listening to them. It is the people who are right in front of us. The disciples ministered to those they came across. I think that's a good place for us to start too. And then last way to stay present is to look for the King. One of the best things that we can do to stay present is to look for something beautiful. Frost patterns on a windshield, or the artwork in the sky of the clouds and all the colors. It's children laughing. It's wonder, true wonder. One of the best ways to do that is get outside. The World Health Organization recently released that we spend 93% of our entire lives indoors. 93%. I'm like 98. My wife is so good at this. Anytime we're offered table indoor or outdoors, I'm like, indoors. She's like, no, let's go outside. And I complain, I have to put on my jacket, or I have to take off my jacket. There's a breeze, there's not a breeze. But it is so good once you're out there. And so look for wonder. Look for wonder. It's all around us. And what you look for, you will find. And if you look for beauty, you will find it. Reason that this message is titled A King Passing By is it actually, though all these stories are about King Jesus passing by these people, and they had these experiences with him, it also comes from a Ralph Waldo Emerson poem that reads, "Today is a king in disguise. Let us not be so deceived. Let us unmask the king as he passes by." What he means by that is today is not common. There's nothing ordinary about today, about this moment. And we could wake up and we could see the majesty before us. We can look at our jobs. Some of us have to do this, work harder than others, but we can look at our jobs as royalty, as a king in disguise. We can look at our children as kings and queens, but also strangers on the street. Never forget that every single person that you come across is somebody that Jesus thought was worth dying for. A king in disguise. And when we open our eyes to it, we open our hearts to the King, Jesus. The band's going to come up here, and I want to take this moment here as we just close out with one more song. Is I imagine that for many of us, we probably connect with one part more than the other. We probably either look back, might feel stuck in our past, or maybe aren't really having our eyes open to the present, or dreading and stressing over the future. Maybe when it comes to the presence, we haven't felt close to God in a long time. Regardless, take this time right now to do just like the woman and to reach out to Jesus. And for some of us, that might be singing. For others, it might be a time of prayer. But take this moment. Would you guys pray with me? Father, may we hold our past as lessons, our future as opportunity, and our present as invitation. And God, may we see all three as an opportunity to move towards you. I pray for anyone who feels stuck in the past. God, give them the strength to know that they are not their failures. They are not what was done to them. Their identity is not found in what they aren't, but our worth and our identities, our purpose is found in who we are in you. God, I also pray for those who are anxious or obsessed or even paralyzed by the future. Help us to let go, to trust you, to not play it safe, to not store up for ourselves, but to turn our blessings into blessings for others, to not put our faith in our stuff, but to lean on you. God, give us the strength and discernment and desire to not waste our lives. And God, I also pray for the present. God, let us realize that we are on the mountain with the creator of the universe, who, as unbelievable as it is, desires a relationship with us. Let us see today as a king passing by, an opportunity to be used by you, moved by you, shaped by your love, and then released to make your love famous. Pray this in Jesus' name.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, we live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. And holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Let's stand and sing holy. And holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. And holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. I will build my life, God, and I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will shaken. No, I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. And holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. And only there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. And I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken.
Let's pray as we close. Lord, thank you for the opportunity to look back and to release things that are needing to be let go of, to take inventory, to be grateful, to be able to look ahead, things that we're excited about, things we have apprehensions about, and to know that you will be there with us with everything that we face. But I thank you for the reminder that we do not want to miss what's right in front of us right now. And so, Lord, help us to be aware of that. Help us to be aware of the people you place in our life, because you want us to be an extension of you towards them. Help us to be aware of the circumstances that we're in the midst of, that you're going to use to shape us and to grow us. And help us to be aware of your presence and your desire to walk with us through everything that we're going through. We thank you, Lord, for your goodness, your love, your faithfulness in our lives. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, hey, I'm going to let you guys go ahead and have a seat before we wind down. Have you been enjoying just this worship team up here serving us tonight? I've loved them, and I appreciate you guys leading us and hearing from Dominic. And it has been so good to connect with you. And hopefully a bunch of you in a few minutes, you're just going to hang with us as we have a little New Year's Eve party right next door. But before we wind down, just a couple quick things. The first that I mentioned is we have this Connect card that we'd love to hear from you on. And so if you haven't already put the finishing touches on that Connect card, you can work on that right now. You can either do the physical copy or the Terra Nova app, but we'd love to hear from you. And as we are winding down, and obviously it is the very end of the year, we are just grateful to be in this position where we go, you know what? We are constantly looking just to be a community that is marked by generosity, by the way that we want to embody what God is all about and make his love and his grace and his kindness faithfulness. And so we just have this belief that we're always able to walk in that generosity more so as a community than we ever would individually. And so if you're part of the Terra Nova community and you want to be a part of giving and supporting our cause of making God's love famous, you can give and you can utilize our offering envelopes, or you can give online or on our Terra Nova app. But we are just so grateful for the faithfulness and the generosity of this community, and as we finish this year off well and jump into a new year. And so we've got that. Everything that you're going to look to drop off on the way out, we've got guest services members that are going to hang on to the baskets. And so whether you want to drop a Connect card, offering envelope, or programs that we can recycle, you can throw those all in there. But next weekend, we are going to jump into a new series. It's called Come and See. And I bet you're wondering what it's going to be about, but you need to come and to see, right? So I hope you'll be back with us for that. If you're hanging for our New Year's Eve party, we'll just be right next door in the high school room. Hope to hang with you for a bit then. But thank you so much for being with us. A happy 2022 and a new 2023. We'll see you back next week. God bless you all.